warlock, weapons and supplies, but you need a place to track your stuff, cause you're so disorganized. You click open the web page, you heard about a critical role, and now you're ready to kick some butt in that mine shot full of no's. It's D&D, D&D Beyond, yeah, D&D, D&D Beyond. You got your stats, you got your swords, and you got your invisible wall. It's D&D, D&D Beyond.
Hello, everyone. This is Todd Talks, and today we're talking about Sea Adventures. And I am joined by lots of people who know lots of things about Sea Adventures. But we are joined by James Haeck, Stacey Allan, Celeste Conowitch, and Alex Kammer. Everyone's basically written or dungeon mastered quite a few Sea Adventures at this point. So, do you want to go around the room or rooms as it is? James, tell us what you're on the panel today.
I'm here to lend any sort of adventure design and DMing tips that I can. I just started a Saltmarsh campaign of my own back at home, and I've been thinking about the topic a lot, so I'm happy to share. Oh, and also, I've been writing a ton of sea-based encounters of the week for D&D Beyond that you can use to supplement your sea games also.
Good save, James. Good save. How about for you, Stacey?
Hi, well, yeah, I'm Stacey. It's really surreal being here, so thanks for having me on. I just released I'm a freelance artist, and I've illustrated covers for the Guild Adepts for a while now, and I'm here because I just released my first adventure on the DM's Guild called Down Came a Blackbird, and it's set in Saltmarsh. So
Congratulations.
And it's excellent. It is a very good adventure. Celeste?
Hi, everybody. My name is Celeste Conowitch. I have been DMing for a long time on various podcasts and streams, and I've always loved pirates. Growing up as a Navy brat, ships, totally my thing. I've been doing a lot of writing about pirates lately with like Onyx Path and a few other places. So yeah, really excited to talk specifically about pirates today. But I guess other ship stuff is cool too.
Are we allowed to talk about other things other than just pirates?
Pirates all the time.
No, all day,
Okay.
every day pirates.
It's just 1 hour of pirates. Yeah. Alex, you have a Kickstarter that is already successful, but it's still ongoing. So tell me about that.
Yeah. I've been. First of all, the director of GameholeCon, and I've been a DM since the mid '80s. So I've run thousands of games, lots of seafaring campaigns, and I've been literally splashing around with nautical campaigns now for a year and a half, producing this book that's now being currently kickstarted. So I've been underwater literally for a while, and so I can't believe it. In October when I got the playtest materials for Saltmarsh, I thought, oh my god, I can't believe it. I'm 2/3 of the way done with my book, and it's coming out at the same time. It was unbelievable serendipity. So I'm delighted to talk about nautical stuff with you guys.
And
All right.
congratulations.
Thank you. Thanks, Joe. I appreciate that. It's exciting.
Yeah.
So first off, what is the appeal of Sea Adventures? What do you think is also the most challenging about doing that in D&D specifically? Joey, we'll start with you.
Great. Yeah, it's a real change of pace. D&D is predicated upon this sort of Conan-esque, medieval-esque fantasy setting with ancient ruins and tombs and all these things that are typically, found either above or below ground. So moving from the ground to the sea is it's something new for D&D players to explore, but it's familiar too. We all know. We all have stories of haunted shipwrecks and pirate battles at sea. And so it allows all the usual trappings of D&D to take on a little bit of new life, new flavor, new unlife in a cool new setting.
All right, thank you. Feel free to talk amongst yourselves. No, but what's interesting about like Sea Adventures is that weird. There's a bit of claustrophobia to it too, depending on how you're playing it. Like if all the players are on a ship, all of a sudden then you as a DM, also have to really flesh out those NPCs if you want to really like capture that seafaring adventure. Because normally the heroes may be just going from town to town murdering people, and that's totally fine. But you may not see some of these NPCs ever again. Whereas I feel like a sea adventure, you almost have to do like more work that's a little bit more macro focused. I don't know. I could be completely wrong.
Yeah.
Well, all the stuff in Ghosts of Saltmarsh actually really supports that. There's a whole thing for your crew and their positions on the ship and all the cool things they can do with whatever different type of ship you have. I just thought of this. Actually, one of the things I really love about aquatic naval adventures is the ship itself. When I was working on Dragon Heist, a big part of interest for me was the manor, Trollskull Manor, that the players can get and upkeep and take care of themselves and sort of make a home base for themselves. And in many ways, the ship is just like that, but portable on water. It's a moving home base. Like adventure can come to you, or you can go to the adventure. It's super cool. I know Celeste has a bit of an interest in pirate ships. Licking them, I've been told.
Yes. What is the tastiest flavor of pirate ship? You need to decide for yourself. I'm a big fan of like a nice little day schooner. I think pretty good. Just little tropical vibe there. But I think on your point about pirates, I think the villains that come up in sea-based adventures are some of the coolest things to keep track of, like having these notorious ships. Yeah, they are these floating fortresses on the seas that have reputations and interact with the world in specific ways. So that's something I think that you need to pour a lot of time into in sea campaigns, and a really exciting part of sailing the seas.
That's a great point, because you don't have a castle come to you, right?
Right.
Normally, well, if you're in my campaign, you do. But yeah, there's like that idea of like this group has a reputation, and you can see them from the horizon coming for you. And you may have had previous encounters with these same pirates or this same villain over and over again. And so you gain like this kind of history and knowledge with these mobile places that you don't know when they're coming together. I think it's a lot more fun for DMs too, if you want to have that battle of the 5 armies kind of thing, where all the villains you ever met come together at once kind of thing. But it does give you some flexibility. What are some of like the toughest things though?
I think one of the biggest challenges with nautical campaigns is the pirate problem. In other words, tropes. It's really easy to fall into.
Don't attack Celeste. How dare you?
I am not. I heart
Called out.
Yeah, but no, I'm not at all. But it's just challenging to do it in a way that is not. Oh yes, I'm familiar. I know which way this is going. And I think. And the other challenge, of course, is that you are on a ship, and having spent a lot of time in the last several months going over the real details of the difference between a schooner and a cog and a caravel, whatever your hull design is, it's still everyone's in real close proximity. And so the development of the NPCs, which is a term I don't care for, but your main characters in your book or your adventure are very important. I think to have to really breathe great role-playing opportunities into a campaign, because you're all so tight together. You're going to spend so much time with these people, and so grudges are going to happen. Someone's going to have it in for the first mate. In fact, a big part of my book is a mutiny that the player characters have to decide how they're going to sort out. What side are they going to be on? Are they going to try to quell the mutiny? Are they going to try to encourage it? What are they going to do about the hiring NPC whose son captain may be in the brig or maybe walking the plank? I mean, real problems like that. So, again, I think just it sounds puerile to say be creative, but don't fall into the same tropes, and then your players will be delighted, I think.
Yeah, that can easily be a political thriller, right? And then you see that with Black Flag, which is a bit more recent example, but like Horatio Hornblower, which I know, it's a book. It's a series of books, also made into a TV show. But that is charting someone's progress from being at the very bottom rung, higher and higher and higher until they're an admiral. And so there's a lot of different ways you can play that. How about for you, Stacey? What do you think is one of the most difficult things about sea adventures?
I guess maybe charting it, like where the players want to go. I think that's also one of the most exciting things about a sea campaign, is like maybe being given a map and just being told, follow this route, go to this island. I think that's, I think with sea campaigns, you can really let the players kind of decide where they're going to go. You can find all sorts of things at sea, like a message in a bottle that might, lead you to an island with treasure. And, I think there's lots of, different leads that can take you into different directions at sea.
That's a good point about maps, right? Like you can really whereas that makes some sense for any campaign that you're running in D&D to have that there are dragons to the north kind of thing, those old timey maps. But if you have a sea map, you can really have it. So you're okay, let's try to find a kraken.
Yeah, here's a monster. You get them in the old ones, don't you?
You can have a little bit more of that wiggle room if you want to have a very free flowing campaign, which I tend to like. Letting your players just go wherever they want. Okay, well, let's try to start a pirate fleet. I had that happen because we were missing a bunch of players, and so we only had 3. And they're no, let's start a pirate fleet. And they were weirdly adept at it. And they got one.
Well, being technically authentic is challenging too, especially with a map. And having just gone through this, a map, when you're looking at medieval seafaring, is a portal and star map. And that looks very different from the maps that we're used to seeing. And so that was fun to come up with that and learn that. I knew there were such things, but I had no idea really what they look like. So to lay something like that on your players, I think they'll be pretty geeked. It's wow, what is that?
Oh yeah, I don't know the difference.
Yeah, so as someone who has never read a star map or a medieval oceanic map, how is it different from reading a normal one?
Well, to really read it, you'd use a bunch of instruments like a sextant and so on. So it basically you're going to make a graphic map that's going to be confusing, but you'll have to give instructions to, in the hands of a proper navigator, they can take you to any spots on this map because it's not something that you can read without a sextant and the other tools that you need to read it. It's cool looking though. I promise you that.
in real life, do they need a sextant? Is this 4th edition seafaring rules for maps? Really crunchy.
In real life, yeah, they use those sorts of a binnacle, a sextant, and so on. But yeah, of course, that's all. At least in my book, that's hand waved. If someone that has a sailor background knows immediately how to read this thing, so.
Oh, this is interesting. So, Wild Rose Mage, who Joey and I know, wants to know, what do you think a good level is or tier for players to get their own ships? How would you allow players to improve their ships as they reach higher tiers? I think hilariously level 1. Because they're not ready.
Rowboat.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You start with a rowboat. No, but there is kind of an absurdity to I love throwing players into situations they shouldn't be in, right? When a player, no, and I don't really mean they shouldn't, but that they're out leveled by. So that means low level characters talking to demons or devils or gods or a dragon. But a whole bunch of level 1 characters trying to be in control of a ship is hilarious, especially if it's a valuable ship, because it's probably more trouble than they want, and they don't have the charisma, the deception. They don't have everything they need to maintain a crew. So I think that friction could be hilarious. It's all on the role playing to keep the ship crew alive and working. And if it's a very valuable ship, then they've got people way higher level than them chasing them. So I would say level 1, but that's my opinion. What's everyone else's opinion on that?
Well, I think you've got a lot of possibilities of how you want to structure your campaign that can kind of inform your choice on that. So if you want to start as your level 1 characters are learning how to be sailors or whatever, and you already have this NPC crew in place, and then so you could start really low level and they build up and they become captains and they become these famous sailors. Or like you said, maybe it's a higher level thing. All of a sudden they are gifted a boat or put in charge of this. So really any tier you can totally adapt to based on what you want out of your storytelling experience with that. So I think that's kind of an exciting thing, that there are good cases for getting a ship or being on a ship at any level of play. But I mean, it's certainly very exciting, in my mind, to be promoted to the rank of captain, after having sailed with the crew for a while. And then, you've got your level 14 bard who just gets voted in and they become that captain. And that sounds like a really cool, epic way to inherit a ship. So I do think, I mean, for me, I would probably go with a higher level or like around mid. But yeah, it's totally flexible based on what you want out of your story, which is super fun.
That's kind of a good point because you can almost, I mean, I played in other systems before where you get ranks based on your level in a sense. And so if you actually did that for your players, and I'm not saying for every single level, but like, okay, once you reach level 3, you are not a captain, but you're like a bosun or something like that. Like you have it charted on their like character sheet in a way of like, this is what level you are now in this crew, based on your level in D&D. Might be interesting. So how about for you, Stacey?
Yeah, I like the idea.
How soon should you get a boat?
I think from the start as well. Actually, I think I really like the idea of going on board with a crew, and then based on each player's skills, they kind of buddy up with a crew member. So the bard could be doing sea shanties, and then you've got the ranger doing the navigation, and then maybe just something horrific happens to the crew, and they're just sort of left in the middle of the ocean, and they've got to kind of take it from there. So I think starting at any level, but yeah, low level's cool. I mean, it's cool to get, to be put on board a ship, stowing away maybe or something like that, and then something happening to the ship, and that's one way that you could get hold of one yourself. And then building it up, sort of naming your ship and doing the flags and the sort of the whole attire of the ship, decking it out, so having it from the start and then building it into your kind of base is something that's really cool.
So Alex, you've tackled this to some degree, I expect, with your new book.
Yeah, exactly. I'm all for square on all fours with Celeste and what she said. That's exactly right. My characters, the characters who play my book, are hired to essentially be a kind of a security force in a search and rescue mission, and you don't need any sailing background, but they certainly will get some, and they have to deal with an incompetent captain who is the basically the merchant company's son, youngest son, who is a real twit, and is dangerous and incompetent and arrogant and high-handed, and I love him so much. He's a wonderful guy. Every time I run a playtest, I always have the scene where the player characters are invited to Captain Tim's cabin for dinner, because it's so fun to just insult the players and be a real pain in the ass and see how everyone reacts. The incompetent sea captain, I encourage all DMs out there to have fun with that, because it really puts everyone it's a real problem. You have the first mate kind of trying to look the other way, like, oh boy, this is bad, and making poor decisions that affect the safety of the crew, as Stacey pointed out. I think it's really a fun, tense thing that you can interject into your campaigns, but that's right for any level. And when it comes to boat ownership, I guess that depends on what your campaign looks like. I think I would analogize that to, like property ownership or something, or stronghold ownership. Probably on the roughly the same trajectory, but that's campaign specific.
I think you just brought up a very interesting point, which I didn't think about until just now. That stupid maybe is the real villain of D&D.
Yes, it's
general.
Dangerous on the water too. Yeah, it's dangerous, And
it should be a plane of existence, whether you're making the choices that are dumb or.
I love it.
Yeah, I do like me a villain who is just who's just an idiot, just a terrible person who thinks they're smarter than everyone else is always the best kind of villain sometimes. The most frustrating too, and probably just the most cathartic for everyone in their lives, I guess. We've all known a Captain Tim.
Yes.
Yes. What's your? Okay, I already know everything that Celeste is going to say. What's your favorite villain to include in seafaring campaigns? Like whether they're like just a group, like pirates. Like what do you find most fun to interject into these seafaring campaigns that is maybe interesting, or like how do you spin it maybe in a different way? I'm always like Kraken, but yeah.
I mean, I put a sea hag into my Thanking the Blackbird adventure, but she's got a bit of a twist. She's kind of like a migratory sea hag, so she has control over all the kind of bird life, so she can control the gulls and all the kind of birds that are around the harbour in Saltmarsh, and she's very bird-like herself, and she actually layers out at sea. That's kind of where her lair is, in a kind of massive undead whale which kind of can swim around. So I had a lot of fun making Salty Maud. She's my sea hag, and yeah, that was really cool. And to have her kind of control the seabirds, so as well as have sort of control under the water and over the water as well, was something that I did for mine. So
The adventure is amazing, and I don't want to it's too good for this idea, and it's a terrible idea. But a seagull poop golem or elemental would be great. I'm just pointing out that anyone who's been out to
That's a
sea
freebie.
or
That's a freebie.
lived on the ocean for a long time, your fear of sea poop it becomes a very real thing. How about for you, Celeste?
Write that one down.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Seagull
for me,
poop golem.
Yeah, there you go. There's your grand villain. For me, I always love really coming to like the human part of the sea adventure. So I love putting like the Royal Navy like as your bad guy. You know, if you are a crew of pirates trying to do your thing, so subverting your normal tropes and just trying to get your treasure and make your living while this empire is out hunting you, like, is always something that's super interesting to me. So it always bringing questions of morality too, like, is it the right thing that they're hunting me? Like, are they really serving the people to get these pirate crews out there? Or like, I just love, making a moral morass of the situation. So I'm always very pro like Navy captains as your villain, or very Les Mis at times, I suppose.
Yeah, that's interesting. That is kind of like a part of a lot of seafaring stories, is that the threat of the Navy. Like, they are that's a point where they often make the kingdom of well, for good reason. the enemy of the seas is actually the establishment. Instead of you like trying to hunt monsters so much, you're basically considered to be the monster. So
Yeah, people
you're
are
the one
hunting
trying to
you.
avoid. Yeah, exactly. How about for you, Alex?
Well, it's hard for me to look past the pages of my book because they've been in my face for so long recently. But the
That's fair.
Sahagin for me, and again, this is the delightful serendipity of Saltmarsh coming out when it did. It's amazing. So I've been researching and writing about Sahagin now for the last year and a half. The book is called Sea King's Malice, and the Sea King himself is a massive Sahagin, presiding over a massive city in a deep trench 500 feet below the ocean surface. And the Sahagin are interesting to me because they're, of course, we look at them as raiders and basically terrorists, and they are, but they have a very complex society that are, and they're compelled to do things for, of course, for very different reasons that would make sense to us. So to write a lot about this very interesting creature was really fun for me. I just finished a Sahagin ecology book that accompanies the Kickstarter, talking about their government and their religion, society, ecology, and so on. And so they're pretty nuanced. And as I got more into it, especially if you go back and do the research through older editions, that's a very well developed creature, and it was a thrill to be able to take that and do some new stuff with it. Because I think their the pecking order and their societal goals are very interesting, and so it was fun for me to have them be the foil in my book.
And for Stacey, birds really are the villain. Like, well, they're not the villain, but they're being controlled by that
they're being
hag.
controlled, yeah.
Why is that so scary? Like that notion that the birds themselves are. I mean, clearly this is a reference to Hitchcock's The Birds.
Yeah,
but like
I
it's
love
terrifying.
Oh no, yeah. I mean, because they're everywhere. Birds are everywhere. So
If you look out the window.
Yeah, I know. You're like, they're watching me right now as I talk.
It's a bit of a problem in Britain, actually. The seagulls are really big, and they do like steal your chips and stuff. But so
problem in Seattle too. Terrible.
I feed them, so don't be careful when you feed seagulls.
You're the problem.
Bite your finger.
Todd.
Nah, I feed crows as well. My neighbors hate me. But that is, like, it's interesting how scary that is, because as tough as you may feel, and you're coming up against birds, your greatsword doesn't mean anything. Like swarms of things.
Yeah, the resistance it's quite frightening, actually. It can take quite a lot to bring down a few swarms of gulls. Can actually be quite overwhelming, which I found out in playtesting.
What? Yeah, there may be a lot of dead people. A lot of people become gull poop. Maybe eventually in that adventure. What are there any things that you have to do differently as a DM when you're running a seafaring campaign when it comes to spells, when it comes to any type of magical items, and then even technology to make it interesting? Because a fireball can be significantly more dangerous on a ship. Correct. Lightning maybe not so much, but lightning actually, if you're behind the ship and you shoot a lightning bolt through, you could get every person on cannons or ballista or anything else. Like, you can think a lot more tactically when you use magic. So how do you handle magic when you're out there?
Well, and likewise, if you're not on the ship, if you've leapt overboard, a fireball is significantly less powerful down there.
Right.
Finding ways to mix up the undersea and above sea elements can make for really wild tactical battles. Like if you're in a Sahuagin lair that's partially in dry or moist cave stones, and then there's a big pool that you might have to chase them through. Then suddenly you're dealing with all different terrain with different rules, and the aquatic creatures then have the upper hand on you. And I have seen a lot of dungeon masters try and, I guess, make this easier on themselves by giving their players equipment to easily handle the challenges that water provides. And I would challenge dungeon masters to not give in so quickly. It's maybe a bit of a struggle for players to be like, I can't fight at full power underwater. I hate underwater. But I've played enough Legend of Zelda games to know that having to struggle through a terrible water level gives you a lot of appreciation for when you finally gain the power to fight at full power underneath the water.
Yeah. That's a good point. I mean, you can't value limitations until you come up against them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a good point. How about for you, Stacey?
Well, yeah, I mean, I like to play kind of heavily armored fighters, and they just hate being in the water because you just think you have to think about what you're carrying, like all the armor that you're wearing, and underwater combat is just is quite terrifying actually. So. And if you're using like spells and things on boats, you have to be aware that you can get easily knocked into the sea, and then you have to either fight in the water or find your way back onto the boat. So there's lots to consider.
There's a lot of evil things a dungeon master can do too, right? Like when your spell components get wet, like it's not like when gunpowder gets wet, does that screw up your spells? That would be fun. I would love it. I would like extended rules for when terrible things happen to your spell components. Like if you use the wrong one.
A mishap table or something.
Yeah.
As long as we're talking about boats, though, we should talk about collateral damage too. We don't want to throw a fireball if you're on your own boat. If the rules go out the window a little bit. If you have been boarded by a bunch of Sahuagin, are you really going to use that area of effect spell if it means 1,000 gold worth of repairs and spending 2 weeks in dry dock? But if you're on an enemy, or the sinking outright. But then if you decide to board someone else's boat, then you can go to town. You can beat your enemy by just destroying the thing they're floating on. Don't even deal with them. But
you don't have to care.
Todd, you played Sea of Thieves. You know what we're talking about.
I'm the reason for many of us sunk ship. So yeah. That's my favorite thing to do. Actually, no, I do in Sea of Thieves. For those that have not played the game, I love getting gunpowder barrels onto people's ships. More importantly, I love it when other people have them, and then I get on their ship. So I sunk 3 ships in a row after my own ship was sunk. By going up to everyone's, because a good place to put gunpowder for some reason is all the way at the top in the crow's nest, because that's the safest. So you just sneak on someone's ship, and then you just start dropping gunpowder down onto their deck, and you set a fuse, and you think that the game is over for them. They've lost their entire ship, they've lost all their gold, and then you just go from ship to ship, keep on doing that. Just one person can cause so much damage in any kind of sea campaign, I guess, is a really good point that Joey's making is, you don't ever want to cast a fireball on your own ship. But once you're on someone else's ship, there's so much to do, right? To like make their lives terrible. Like you shoot the fireball with no one there and just set the bottom of the ship on fire. You know, you can do all kinds of things that are way, way shadier to accomplish your goals that may not even ever be combat necessarily, I would think. So,
No, you
Celeste,
could poison
what are...
their supplies. And, sorry, yeah, you can like
poison their
some people
grog. I
poison their
mean,
supplies, and then they starve or something.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a great idea, actually. I mean, it's evil, but yeah. All you have to do is get on the ship and then leave. Right? You've poisoned their supply of food, or you got rid of all of their supplies, and then just watch them slowly. Yeah, that's what D&D is about.
It's really evil.
slowly watching people.
But it does preserve the salvage value as opposed to destroying it from distance.
Yes.
They're all dead, conveniently located. Now it's all cleansed. You pick up the ship, and you sell it for a much better coin instead of having to replace all the mass in the yard.
It's a good point. Having a plague rat. Yeah.
But you got to make sure they don't have a cleric who has neutralized poison or anything like that on their team.
Clerics are the biggest problem ever.
They destroy many good plans.
They destroy all the good plans. So yeah, for Celeste, how do you like to handle that magic and everything else?
Yeah, well, first off, I think it's really, really important that if you know you're going to be walking into a sea campaign and like just make that very clear with your players right off the bat. Just do have a frank, honest conversation about, hey, things are going to be different. So when you are creating this character, if you do choose Fireball, be aware of the limitations or the potential challenges with that, and let that own that challenge as a player, as opposed to like walking into it not being expected, making your heavy armor paladin that's all about this and like their mount, and then all of a sudden, oh, we're on a boat. Cool. So definitely having that conversation right off the bat, making it clear to everyone, and then also I think being more forgiving or awarding creative solutions a lot more. I think some of the fun of a seafaring campaign is this campiness and like these naval battles, and it's all very cinematic and stuff we've seen a lot in pop culture. So rewarding creative solutions just constantly, and then opening up abilities to make your magic like change and be flavored more towards, so introducing things like sea witches and like sorcerers who learn to control the weather and like things like that, and making that accessible in your game, and putting items that are specific to mastering the challenges of the aquatic. Like maybe that's what they're hunting, this buried treasure is some kind of like diving suit or something, so that give them that agency to make them really good at this and get better at this over time, I think.
Oh yeah, I mean, you'd like have Fireball just make the water boil in that same area of effect, right? Something creepy like that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, allow it. Play fast and loose. Let that creativity shine through, because this is a very different environment than traditional D&D, and I think that should be embraced and celebrated.
And to that point, we have a comment in Twitch that is fantastic by Justin Tegan. Tegan, probably. Can you dimension door a little keg of gunpowder onto an enemy ship? Oh, fun.
Yes, it's like fun to me.
I don't know. You get like, I know you couldn't use dimension door to like cause water to spill in the in the bottom parts of the ship. Like, so it just starts filling up with water. But man, there are a lot of spells that could be considered to be very low powered that could do so much damage on a ship.
While we're talking about gunpowder, though, I want to make a quick note that if you're playing in the Forgotten Realms,
has
a battle going on out
come
there
to where you live? That sounds like an old-fashioned train.
But if you're playing Ghosts of Saltmarsh in the Forgotten Realms, or playing a sea campaign in the Forgotten Realms, going to the Moonshae Isles or going to Luskan or wherever, you should note that gunpowder isn't a thing in the realms. Smoke powder is a thing that has been concocted and is kind of like a magical variant on black powder, but it's rare. And notably, actually, in the realms, gunpowder, even when it's brought from other worlds, doesn't work. There's something in the way that Faerun and Tortle as a world exists that stops whatever chemical reaction makes black powder work from actually sparking,
that's
which is a
interesting.
weird canon detail.
That is a very weird detail.
But if you're playing in Greyhawk, where the book is set, if you're playing in your own campaign world, those rules can go out the window. You can do whatever you want. But that's a fun little quirk of the realms that you can pay attention to. And so instead of cannons, your boats... your boats will have like ballista and stuff mounted on the back instead of cannons. So, you make this, hooked harpoon or something to punch through the hull of a ship and then retract it and tear out this huge hole at the bottom. I mean, that's as good as a cannon or better. What were you saying, Todd?
I'm smoke powder. I'm fascinated. Is there anything dangerous about smoke powder in the realms?
Yeah, smoke powder actually shows up a lot.
By a bullet.
It shows up a lot in Dragon Heist. Jarlaxle's gunslingers have pistols and blunderbusses that work off smoke powder. I believe the Gif, who showed up in Mordenkainene's Tome of Foes, all of their weapons are smoke powder based. And actually, minor Dragon Heist spoilers, but if you can blow up the Xanathar's base by strategically placing smoke powder kegs around it, and then having someone light them up, and then boom, 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 the whole thing comes crashing down. But as far as I know, and I'm not 100% sure on it, smoke powder works, more or less like gunpowder, but it's got a more magical twist to it.
Right. Okay. That's interesting.
If I may, one other thought on the use of magic with underwater and surface campaigns is you will notice, this is my book's a D&D book, a 5e book. There's not a lot of guidance as to underwater, how really a lot of things are affected in an underwater environment, and which was very relevant for me because the final third of my book takes place 500 feet down. But we know it makes sense that fire spells don't work as well, and they're half as effective. That makes sense. But the corollary is that water-based spells should be more effective. So if you are going to cast Tidal Wave underwater, that should have all kinds of interesting effects. That should be a lot of fun for the DM to do that. A whirlpool will have a much more impact than it does in the traditional sense when you're casting it on a undersea cavern lake or something like that. This is when you are the player adjacent to these spell effects that have significant sequela, sort of not unlike the volume. You can get into the volume calculations of a fireball, and you get blasted back with it. Well, you cast Tidal Wave in an undersea cavern and it's full of water, that has consequences. And so that's always, I think that's fun as a DM to be able to go certainly outside of what's any formal guidance that we have in those spells, but let logic control.
That's good. Yeah.
Are there older editions of D&D? You would know, Alex. Are there older editions of D&D that have that guidance that people could turn to?
No.
Yep. There are older editions of D&D. We have that established. Yeah, there are some. But the problem is they're often conflicting. So it's you can find what other editions have done and you see if you like it. And that's the nice thing. You can sort of sift through and pick what works for you. But
it does put you in the place of like having to think about physics a bit. It does. Like more than any other campaign that I would argue, unless you're doing like Spelljammer.
Think about water
like
pressure.
weather and having to keep track of how storms work, and like there are a lot of specific things you need to really think about.
And there's weird things that a lot of people don't even know about, like icicles that happen. They hit the ground, like they hit the way that water works is so bizarre. I don't know if you've ever seen the video of like all these crabs getting frozen, but like a single icicle will just grow and hit the seafloor and then spread out, almost like fire, right? And this is like time lapse, but it just kind of grows, and a bunch of sea creatures get caught up in it because they don't know any better. And they eventually get frozen in this slowly creepy tendril-like ice sculpture that grows under the water. So probably watch a lot of National Geographic if you're about to do a sea adventure, and you'll have some like creepy, weird ideas. Does everyone have like their favorite encounter that they've either written or been a part of while on a sea campaign? James, you seem very happy.
I'm thinking about some of the encounters of the week I did, and for Jasper's Game Day, the suicide prevention charity event that happened a couple of weeks ago, I ran the first Saltmarsh linked encounter that I wrote recently, probably back in March when the book was announced, called Sharkfin Shipwreck. And it's a first level encounter where you are given passage on a ship to Saltmarsh from another port. And so, right, we get them on the ship immediately, but we don't give them ownership of the ship immediately. So they get the taste and they can sort of progress to that. And they use their skills and their wits to navigate the ship through a storm, which is a huge part of seafaring, storms and the perils that can arise there. And then whether or not they, if they succeed, then they slingshot right through the storm and they slide into port. But if they fail, the ship is hurled about and dashed upon the rocks, and then they have to battle with Zhuagin and, get on driftwood scraps and find their way to shore. So it's this very responsive encounter. I think it responds to their successes and failures really well. And, when I ran it, it worked really, really great. People loved, applying their different skills to seafaring, whether it's a religion to call upon Procon, god of the sea, and Greyhawk, or Umberlee, goddess of the sea, and the Forgotten Realms to bless their voyage, or using acrobatics to, Errol Flynn swing from the riggings to do something cool. And getting people to think of all the Errol Flynn or Pirates of the Caribbean movies that they've seen in the past really encourages them to get cinematic with their play. And so that was a lot of fun for me to see.
That's a good point. Deception and persuasion becomes the most important things for a captain to have.
Yeah, you've got a crew. How do you manage that?
Yeah, and you have to have insight too. You have to, and perception. You have to be aware of your environment and be aware of the people around you. So I think it's very skill based. Probably more so than most adventures. Yeah, arguably. How about for you, Stacey? I think I know which one's your favorite.
I wrote one recently. So I really enjoyed writing the sort of final battle in my adventure. The sea hag's lair. She sort of lairs, as I've said, in this kind of undead whale, and the players have to sail out.
I did not catch that before.
Oh, okay.
That's so gross. That is amazing.
It gets
squishy.
Yeah. And the players, the heroes are kind of sailing out there, and the whale is sort of tangled up in this sargassum. So that kind of, it's kind of big kind of mass of tangled seaweed. So they have to approach it in a very kind of small boat, like a rowboat. So they're kind of, very at the mercy of the ocean around them. And then entering the whale. I had a lot of fun with that because I gave the sea hag some sea spawn, kind of crazy bird-like mutated sea spawn she had inside her whale, but she could also animate it. So when you enter into combat with her, the whale actually kind of comes alive. The organs start beating, and it kind of dives through the water, and it's all cluttered. So there's mechanics for at the end of each player's turn, they have to kind of keep balance as the whale is kind of diving and sort of going through the water.
I'm imagining this so good.
I'm imagining the awful, gross moments that could also happen, if you miss your athletics roll to acrobatics roll to maintain your balance, and you just dive right through its spleen.
Yeah. You slip on or something. Oh my god.
The black heart, the intestines, it's all in there, yeah.
Oh god, it's got to be all bloated too.
Oh yeah, the gas.
So
the gas
stinky.
Alone. Yeah. I mean, but the thief can go on a secret passage through the intestines to get to the lair.
Oh,
maybe
no.
Just squirm through there,
exit, yeah.
Just kind of squish through the intestine to like a vent crawl.
Yeah.
It's so disgusting.
It is. It's disgusting. Sorry, but it becomes very claustrophobic because then the heroes kind of know that they're also, as well as in combat, they're underwater, and all sorts of things could happen. And if they've tethered the boat to the whale, then oh dear, that's kind of gone as well. So
That's fantastic. That is the creepiest villain lair I've ever heard. So yeah,
watch a
big
little
up.
horror.
Yeah, like okay, everyone steal her idea now. No. what book was the book again? It's Down Came a Blackbird.
Down Came a
That's on DM's
Blackbird.
Guild.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's on the D&D. Yeah.
I feel like that's a necessary buy by everyone now.
Yes.
Celeste, how about for yourself?
Yeah, so my favorite, I had this like little arc that I did in my game. It was we were on a pirate ship and then fought a ghost pirate crew that came up. So that ended up happening. It was this really great battle. You know, they got all this ancient treasure, cool, sail away from it. And then they figured out I had the captain of the opposing ship actually like possessed their new ship. So they were sailing around with this ghost captain like in their ship. I was like, well, this is mine now. So of course it's like dealing with this like poltergeist spirit that had possessed their ship now since they destroyed the undead ship. And they had to go and like get a sea witch to like exorcise the ship. And it was a whole like it was so much fun. For me, and she of course needed like treasure, so they had to go and sail on this like bunk ship with this angry captain possessing it. So that was a ton of fun for me having, and yeah, this creepy ghost pirate would show up like whenever you least expected him, try to steer the boat in wrong directions. So that was so
Oh
much
my.
fun. There's something about like seafaring and like ghosts that just goes so well hand in hand. These like old creepy ghosts of sailors, I absolutely love it. So that was so much fun for me.
Yeah, the original 1980, like The Fog, which was made for television, weirdly enough, but was like one of arguably the scariest things I've ever seen in my entire life as a kid. And you see nothing. You just fog shows up, and a lot of people are going to die in very rusty ways. It's just so gross and terrifying. How about for you, Alex?
Well, leaving aside dinner with Captain Tim, from on the surface of the water, I think not unlike what Stacy's describing. There's a scene, a complicated scene with the ship that the player characters are on is in the middle of a raging storm, and it's attacked by marrow. And so all those sorts of things you're talking about, Stacy, where not only just standing upright because the decks are heaving, but waves are crashing over, rigging is failing, and so on. And so all this stuff is going on while they're monsters who are effectively in their own environment because of the circumstances, and it's really challenging. So even every piece of this is purely interesting from a tactical standpoint. How to move, how to cast a spell under those conditions, what it takes. That was fun to put it together. What that would actually look like, and it's really hard. This is a very difficult encounter, and then playtesting was like, man, that was really hard. So that's the point. This is not supposed to be easy, and so that was for Seeking's Malice. That was my favorite tactical, above the waves scene.
See, I just had a horrible thought because of this question, and I'm sorry that I'm subjecting it to all of you, but I just thought like monsters that don't belong in the ocean, like a gibbering mouther that is just floating on the waves.
Oh god, like a trash island in the Pacific. Oh
just
no.
collecting
They're all
people,
Odiugs.
and its whispering is actually more of a siren song, so it's convincing your crew to come down and join it. Yeah. Something just
I was
gross.
wondering when we would get to the eldritch horror aspect of the sea.
Yeah.
And it speaks to the depth of this topic that it took us till the end of our conversation to even touch on the Lovecraft.
I'll bring you there. Yeah, like how do you make the sea horrifying and scary? Like because you have like, I mean, we haven't even properly mapped our own oceans completely. I mean, we have sort of, but we've not been like all the way at the bottom. And the further we get, the weirder things get.
Mm-hmm.
So like, how do you handle like horror on the high seas to make it scary?
Well, that stuff writes itself, I think. I mean, that's
Yeah.
it's easy it's just I have some stuff where to deal with how do characters survive underwater, right? And especially when you deal with cold and pressure and so on. So I had a very Lovecraftian solution, which I won't totally reveal, but it's a very creepy transformation that everyone has the opportunity to partake in, and that's how you can survive at 500 feet down. That's just me.
That's excellent. I'd love that. And like, what permanent effects? Like, you're not gonna look right.
No,
Like something-
no. They're the art. There's some really great panels of art, sort of before and afters that are in the book that are like really nice. So.
And like devil
some-
deals, like in Avernus, you have to make a deal with some sea creature to gain abilities. That's interesting. Yeah.
And Alex, when
Okay.
does your book come out? I want this.
I know.
I have 10 more days in the Kickstarter. It's all, it's 500% funded, and it's all kinds of stretch goals and stuff right now. And the Beetle and Grimm maps are there. I mean, it's really great stuff.
Okay.
So,
What is the name of it again?
Sea King's Malice. Sea King's Malice. Yeah,
Okay.
so, yeah.
Damn,
thanks.
all right.
So, yeah.
So, how about for you, Celeste? How do you make your I mean, we've heard you about the ghost pirates. I gotta stop making fun of you about this because I love pirates as well. I love
But
playing
Are
pirates.
so good.
Yeah.
I'm here to talk pirates, but so something I really love incorporating in my seafaring games that I think is really scary is the threat of disease. I think is something that I really like to play with, because like when you're stuck out at sea and if somebody gets sick out there and say you don't have a cleric or a paladin, what that can do to a crew, and like if somebody goes mad at sea, like what are you going to do? How are you going to handle that? So being trapped in these small environments with a contained crew, that's always like a horror element I love to include, because the stakes just daily as people get sicker, and trying to solve that problem that's something I love to throw into my sea games. I think that's always a super interesting thing. Yeah, or if your food does get poisoned, like starvation, like these very real threats that we can
Right.
relate to as people. That's why I think it's scarier. Like the thing that's going to kill you is not the magic crazy monster. It's literally, your own bodies or starvation. I find those to be the scariest parts of seafaring games.
Sea Adventures have a lot of potential for body horror. almost just like any sci-fi movie or novel, right? Like it has that potential for infection.
What about something so innocuous? And this is something I wrote in too, is the doldrums. From Rrakkma's Ancient Mariner, for example, being listless on an airless sea with nothing in view, day after day after day. That makes it a challenge for the GM to run. But it's
that's a rough play test session. That's a rough like camp. All right, everyone, nothing happens.
Well, yeah, but sure.
Just sit here.
But you narrate the decline in morale and what's happening, and what do you do to try to sort this out? And that's I think that can be pretty cool. Just take a break from encounter combat.
Yeah,
I
terror
think as
from
a DM
environment. Drowning is terrifying to me, and I don't think I can handle that. Right, like in a D&D game, like if you're stuck in a boat that's sinking, that's always the scene that freaks me out the most. I almost drowned as a kid once because of a very dumb choice. So I went under a pool cover. Funny thing about pool covers in the 1980s, when you push up, they just bring the water up with you.
Yeah.
They don't
you're
bring
lucky to get out of that, dude.
Oh yeah, it was dumb. But yeah, that's always been like the scariest thing for me, is like something just so mundane in a way, right? And terrifying. How about for you, Stacey? What scares you, other than birds?
yeah, apart from the birds.
and dead whales.
I think the idea, like you were saying about the fog, I've kind of got this image in my head of, if you're on the ship and you're quite a tight crew, bringing someone new in. So say coming across a rowboat with just one other person in it, and then bringing them into bringing someone in from the outside and you don't know anything about them, and they're not acting super friendly, but they're not acting, they're just a stranger. Bringing a stranger on board and what that could do to the crew. The kind of the role play elements of that. Also, I thought, like when you were saying about putting strange monsters, like monsters that shouldn't be there, I think a rowboat mimic could be quite cool as well.
Oh yeah. There's an old Norwegian legend about something like that. I did that to players with they thought they were getting into a longboat, and the longboat was actually the mouth.
That's amazing. Yeah, that was just
I don't want to play with any of you. You're all full of terrible ideas.
Oh, it's so upsetting when you see teeth just grow on the sides of your boat. And you're like, wait, whoa.
Upsetting
yeah,
is a word. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I'm on board with that. That's terrifying. How about for you, Joey?
All of y'all's imaginations. I agree with everything that's been said. One thing I think that hasn't been explored yet is claustrophobia on the ocean sea. You can sail wherever you want, but you're isolated to that tiny bit of wood that you're floating on, or, a small island if you're lucky. And if something ever happens to you, right, you are stuck on the open ocean. If there's someone who does, someone goes maniacal and takes out an ice pick and starts murdering, I mean, uh, you're stuck in there with them, or to quote a movie, they're stuck in there with you, and suddenly you've got sort of an alien situation going on. I mean, it doubles if the body horror aspect comes into it too, because all of these marine legends we have, all the legends we have, period, about monsters and so forth, are the darkest part of the human id. And if you can see someone, that mental transformation undergoing physically on someone, if in D&D lore, marrow are the result of creatures coming into contact with an idol of Demogorgon that appeared at the bottom of the ocean, and a demon lord's influence. But what if you see that person becoming a marrow before your very eyes, as they have the power and evil of a Demogorgon-like entity in their own heart, and it just manifests through that? Suddenly you've got like the sickness aspect, the body horror aspect, and the crazed isolationist the stranger aspect too. It all comes in together when you're trapped in a boat.
Stop showing
people
off.
that you don't know. No, I love synthesizing everything you've got. Good. I'm just drawing on all your threads.
No, none of us are ever going to play together.
Oh no, we're all too evil for each other.
No.
Yeah. Well, we'll certainly not go DM for each other. But no, that's excellent. Those are all
DM who DMs for all of us.
Yeah, I think they're more scared. They're in there. They're not DMing for us. We're DMing for them. We just take them hostage. All right. Well, it's been a full hour, and this has been awesome. And I have like all these new creepy, gross ideas. Largely in part to Stacey. And I'm super excited. Let's go around the room. Alex, first of all, remember everyone, your Kickstarter has 10 days left. That's correct. And what is it called again?
Yeah, it's Sea King's Malice. And for anyone out there who has taken a peek at this and who's already backed, thank you so much. I've many hundreds of backers. This project means a lot to me. I've done a lot of writing and published a lot of stuff, but this is going to be my first full color, full hardbound D&D adventure that's going to be in game stores. And I couldn't, the 12-year-old me, it couldn't be more delighted. And thanks to Beetle and Grimm, those folks, for doing these awesome ship maps. They're producing a map pack that has my 3 ships of different configurations. So if you back this, you will have ship maps that you can play forever. One side is specific to my campaign. The other side is dry erase. So that'll be tremendously useful for all the DMs out there. I'm just so pleased about where this has come from and where it's going. And I have 10 more days, and we're in the real cool sort of salad stuff of stretch goals falling like crazy, where you get all kinds of cool stuff when you jump in at this point. So I'm excited to see where it ends up, and I can't wait to have the book in my hands and all of your hands, and you can all let me know what you think. So thank you, and thanks for having me on, Todd. It's great to see you.
No, it was awesome. It was a good conversation. Stacey, how about for yourself? Tell us again about your book.
Oh yeah, so my adventure, Down Came a Blackbird, is up on the DM's Guild. People have bought it already, so thank you so much for people that have bought it and reviewed it. It's gone down better than I'd hoped, actually, and it's like the first personal project that I've kind of finished since having my daughter, who's 2. So I'm really pleased that it's been well received, and thank you so much for having me. It's just been really, really fun. So yeah, thank you.
Celeste?
Yeah, again, my name is Celeste Conowitch. If you want to hear me doing more D&D stuff, maybe not as scary as the rest of these folks, I don't know. You can check me out on my podcast, Venture Maidens, which is an actual play D&D podcast, or my other podcast, DMnastics, which is on the DM's Block channel. And if you want to stay tuned, I wrote a book, Pirates of the Blood Sea, that will be coming out by Onyx Publishing in the next couple of weeks. So stay tuned for that. That'll be going up on the DM's Guild. Yep, if you ever want to talk to me about pirates, follow me at C Conowitch, and we will totally talk. And this was awesome. Thank you so much, Todd, for having me.
All right, thank you to everyone. Joey, you work here. I don't know that you have anything to
People know where
plug.
to find me. But I gotta say, they're not what I'm working on right now. But please go look at those older encounters of the week that have a Saltmarsh connection. I think they're a really great start to Saltmarsh if you want to lead people into the city, right? Because that book starts with sort of a Scooby-Doo haunted house adventure, which is awesome. But if you want people to really feel the salt of the sea instantly, a little encounter to lead in will get you in there. So take a look at them.
All right, excellent. Thank you everyone for being on the show. I really appreciate it. Check out all those books and awesome projects that everyone's working on. And of course, Dead Whales and Celeste's obsession with pirates. So always include pirates. Thank you everyone for watching.
Bye.
Hi, everyone. Thank you.